my name is Antoine and I'm the creator of codefly. And thank you for joining me for this introduction to codefly. My passion is building software. And over the last decade, I had the chance to create new platforms from scratch or join existing microservice projects. The experience of building software is amazing, but sometimes it can be difficult or it can be even frustrating. And this is why I'm building codefly. Codefly is a tool I wish I had all these years to help me focus on what I needed to do and to write the code that needed to be written. If you're joining me, I hope it's because you're sharing the same pain that I had and you want to find a better solution. So for me to introduce codefly to you, I'm gonna pick, as usual, a Hello World application. But so today we'll build the Hello World of microservice architecture. So user will go to website, authenticate himself, and a request will be made to a backend server in Python to say hello. And we will use a very common architecture pattern in microservice, which is the API gateway pattern. All requests that must go to backend services will go through an API gateway. We will use O0 as our identity provider, and we'll use Next.js for our website. So this is already a fairly complicated example. If you think of all the things that needs to happen for this to be deployed. You need to write the code, but this is just a few lines of code. That's the whole point of a Hello World example, but there is a Kubernetes deployment all the way. So let's look at what it will look like in codefly, and that will enable me to introduce a few concepts so that you can follow more easily what's happening in the rest of the demonstration. So this is how codefly structure your work. In codefly, we'll create a project. We'll create two applications, one called public that will contain the website using Next.js 0 and an API gateway with KrakenD. The second application called backend will contain our backend server in Python, and we use the Python Fast API agent. So I mentioned agent a few times already. What is an agent? So what is an agent? Well, you're probably familiar with the concept of agent in Hollywood, right? Agents are the interface between actors and, let's say, the director or the producer. But that's exactly the same role that an agent has in codefly. When you are a director of a movie and you want to hire an actor, you will go through the agent to hire your actor. It's the same thing here. If you want to create a new service based off Python, you will hire an agent. In that case, we will use a Python Fast API agent to get started. It will just create some boilerplate code to help you get started. It will have a lot of other roles, but we will go that in the next demo. What's important is that codefly helps you with deployment with all your environments. Here, this demo focuses on a local deployment, but on the right-hand side, you see that we will focus on the local environment, but that codefly will work for your staging, production, etc. environment. So let's get started. We're in the terminal. This is where most developers feel comfortable. So let's add a project called demo. Yes, and add our first application. So we will start with the backend. Yes, and let's see actually what is happening. So let's open the project with our favorite editor. So we opened our editor and we are ready to create our first service. Let's create our first service using the Python Fast API agent. Here we download the agent. Agents are really independent of the CLI. You will get some information about this agent, and then each agent wants to be configured in a certain way, so you just follow the prompt. We want auto reload, and here we're going to work, which will install the required code to get started. Right, we're good to go. Let's try to run it. So in codefly, you should basically run any service the same way. You get some output, and it gets interesting is you see this web server URL. So let's click on it and see what is going on. The codefly CLI comes with its own front end, and you can have a view of your project. So here we're in the demo project, and you see that we have one application, the backend, and with one service, the server, and you see that it's using the Python Fast API agent. So we can click on this, and we see that, for example, we have access to the REST API. So we can actually try it out right away. execute, we're gonna see the version. Well, let's continue. Let's add the greeter endpoint. And we need to import request, and we are good to go. Now, if we go back to the front end of codefly, you should see that the new REST is already here. Very convenient. And we can try it out. Hello, stranger. That's good start. This was the first step. The second step is to take care of the API gateway and the front end. So let's create a new application. And we're gonna call that public. And here we will create the API gateway using the Kraken agent. Yes, no. And the service is added. Now we need to tell this new service, the API gateway, that it relies on the server. So that's adding a dependency. So let's add the dependency. For APIs, that sounds about right. Application, it's in the backend application, and the name is server. That sounds about right. Now that we created the dependency between the gateway and the server, we need to configure the gateway to decide which route to expose. And this is what codefly calls sync. This is how we sync things between services. So let's sync service. And you see here that we have the greeter route that has been detected. Do we want to expose this route? Yes. And we want to use authentication? Yes as well. And the other route is the version. Do we want to expose it? Yes. Do we want to use authentication? No. And we are good to go. Now we can run the service and see what's going on. So you see that when you run, now the API will run automatically with the backend server, and you see some logging happening here. If you go back to the codefly companion, you should see a new application created here, public, and you can see that you have the API, and you can even get your Swagger file here. We can also check that the authentication has worked. The version should work as before. Execute, because we don't specify any authentication. And the greeter should not work because it requires authentication. And we get error unauthorized, which is great. We are ready to move to the last piece, which is the website. Let's add our last service. You're getting the hang of it, I hope. Let's call that web, and we'll use an Next.js 0 agent. Downloading the agent. Sounds good. No description. And now we have to get all our npm dependencies ready. So it will take a while. So that's a good time for a quick coffee break. That was actually a very short coffee break this time. And now we want to introduce a dependency between the front end and the API gateway. This is, again, the same way. Dependency for web, yes, API. And we are good to go. Now we can actually run our service. And now you can see that the web will run its two dependencies, the direct dependency, which is the API gateway, and the backend server. And we have the website here. It is running locally. And we're going to test it out with authentication. So let me log out just to make sure. We won't call the version, get the 0.0 version, which is great. Run the greeter, error loading data. Let's log in. It's Google. And when we use the greeter, it'll int 1. Well, that's pretty good. So as a developer, usually this is the fun part. You get something running locally, but now the pain comes in. How do I build Docker images for my code? How do I write my Kubernetes deployment manifest, etc., etc., etc. But this is where codefly is very powerful, and not really codefly themselves, but the agents. Agents are capable to build themselves. So let's see what it looks like. Let's create the Docker file. Here, the first one has already been cached. The second one is the Kraken, which is already Docker, so there's basically nothing to do. and we're gonna work on the website with Next.js for the build. It will take, oh, so I use the cache pretty smartly. That's kind of the other advantage of not having to write your own Docker file because they're actually not easy to write correctly. But we're good. We have these 3 Docker images, and now we want to deploy our applications. And we will use customize. So let's deploy the service. Now, if you see, you have this folder called deployments, and this is where all your customized manifests will live. Now we are good. We can deploy to our local cluster. So let's deploy this customize. And that's it. If you look at all your pods, you see that you have your backend server running here in this namespace, etc., etc. And now we are actually ready to test it out locally by exposing our public endpoints. And here, let's go back to the 3000. So now this is proxying Kubernetes, and we get the same behavior. Version is going to work, and the greeter is going to fail. Let's log in. Hello. That was pretty painless, I would say. So I hope you really enjoy this demo. So please visit codefly.ai and click on the want to know more. And I will be glad to answer, and we can see how we can help each other build some really cool stuff.